Well, we've had 50 years to do a lot of smart things, which we haven't done. We've raised the debt ceiling under every single president, and I'm frankly tired of the threats to us. Better get after those Republicans because they don't want to spend as much money as the Democrats and they're just so unfeeling. I say bollocks on the whole system. And let's just launch right into it. What I want to talk about is build back better or build back better. Blah, blah, blah. Build back better. Blah, blah, blah. We've had 30 years to get this right. And these world leaders, all they want to do is blah, blah, blah. That was Greta Thunberg. Why is Build Back Better something that I don't care about? Why am I not interested in Joe Biden's infrastructure Build Back Better bill? First of all, Boris Johnson used that term before I ever heard Biden use it. But I read an article saying that Biden thought of it before Boris Johnson. I don't really care because it actually came from a UN conference in Japan. In Sendai, I think, they were discussing how to rebuild after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. The concept is, after a disaster, we rebuild, but we rebuild better so that we don't have as much of a disaster next time. Well, we've had 50 years to do a lot of smart things, which we haven't done. We've kicked the can down the road so many times. We've raised the debt ceiling under every single president. And I'm frankly tired of the threats to us saying that we better get after those Republicans because they don't want to spend as much money as the Democrats and they're just so unfeeling. They're so evil. Mitch McConnell, he's just the worst or whatever. I say bollocks on the whole system. We could have been doing such a better job, both at the local government level, the state level, and especially at the federal level regarding infrastructure. You will recall that President Trump was unveiling his infrastructure proposal the day that Charlottesville, August 15th, the day that things got violent in downtown Charlottesville, and Heather Heyer was hit by a man driving a car. So that day he was unveiling his infrastructure proposal. Just given the fact that he was an outsider, much smarter at business than any previous presidents. I mean, Larry Summers, Barack Obama wins and he gets Larry Summers to be his economic advisor. And Tim Geithner, those clowns. Yeah, well, so we know how that all went. And then, of course, we saw Joe Biden use Charlottesville. We saw Joe Biden use a lie from Charlottesville to launch his presidential campaign. I just couldn't even believe it. Because as we know, President Trump did not refer to the neo-Nazis and white supremacists as very fine people. He actually clarified in the very same press conference and said not the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists because they should be totally condemned. But some of them were there to protest the statue. Now, whether that was true or not, we all kind of were able to unpack what happened sort of afterward, even though the whole thing is fishy. The organizer of it, he just disappeared into the woodwork. He's not some long-term big white supremacist guy at all. Jason Kessler. That's where the infrastructure plan went under Trump. Nowhere. Because he was fighting all of the media. And the idea that somehow making America great again was white supremacist. But back to the economy. Why do I not care about spending all this money? Why is it that when advocacy groups accost Senator Kyrsten Sinema in a women's bathroom in Arizona, why is it that I don't agree with them that we need this bill right now? We need to pass this bill right now. Because those who are crafting this bill, I don't really care what party they're in, but they are the same people who time and again have spent taxpayer money and sent it overseas or sent it to bail out mismanagement in states, sent it to give to their cronies so that their cronies can build sweetheart projects. You think no bid contracts are a thing of the past? No, so I don't trust it at all. I don't think that our infrastructure is going to get better. I don't think we're going to prepare for a future disaster like the name is supposed to imply. Because every time we have a hurricane, we get more and more property destroyed on a floodplain that was not a good place to build in the first place. Every time we have a fire, we get property destroyed that is not a good place to build in the first place. So I don't see them talking about anything else but being in control of our energy sources, which is great. I love solar. Wind has its place. Can they replace it all at the moment? Probably not. The whole energy issue is very fraught with kind of a similar hijacking that we have with the pandemic. What it is scientists who say, well, wait, that's only one scenario. That's the worst case scenario. But okay, if we're going to have more flooding, shouldn't we be actually building levees and dikes like they have in the Netherlands? Shouldn't we be making sure there's proper drainage underneath these neighborhoods? Like in Houston, there was an older neighborhood that had excellent drainage. My sister lived there, and Harvey came in. She was fine. But the newer areas, they did not have good drainage. So whoever's running things is not using best practices, sadly. And since it's the same old crew in power, Pelosi, Schumer, even McConnell, who's just controlled opposition, Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, what Bernie and AOC say is intellectually more honest than what Biden says. They say, well, we spend so much on defense, and we still can't even feed our homeless or take care of our homeless. But that is a fallacy. They've got the problem correct. We spend so much on defense, and we're not taking care of our own people. But this is why I see Bernie Sanders and AOC as frauds and fakes. They've never tried to expose the corruption that they know is happening, the money laundering, USAID, millions and billions of aid going over to overseas, some to Ukraine, for various bailouts, and then money, in the case of Ukraine, went missing from the bank there. It was a whole huge scandal, and they never recovered it. They said they were going to. And we have these same players in power. Same players. Bernie Sanders doesn't call out the corruption. He just rails against the system being capitalist. Which brings me to my next point. What is the deal with capitalism? And what is the deal with socialism? Democratic socialism. Is capitalism bad? No, capitalism is a means to an end. But if capitalism is fraught with corruption and cronyism, then it will be bad. So it's like having a car like a Yugo or something from Yugoslavia and having a Rolls Royce. They're both cars. It's the kind of capitalism that we are engaging in. If it's going to be the multinational corporations that I was speaking of in my last video, who steal all the natural resources from other countries and are doing it to this day and lobby with the U.S. State Department for friendly environmental lax regulations abroad, if it's that kind of capitalism, it's extremely destructive. And I do understand why people become Marxists. I understand why people talk about communism and they're saying that capitalism has injured so many people. But that's where I stop. Because whether it's democratic socialism or whether it is communism, you are removing the incentive to create. You are removing the freedom to create new things that nobody's ever thought of before, and to do it assuming all the risk, and if it works out, gaining all the reward. If we keep everyone on stimulus money, not taking jobs, and not being there, living their best lives, learning a skill, moving up, thinking of ways to do better, then we are going to lose who we are. Does this have anything to do with whiteness? Absolutely not. Zero to do with whiteness. Our grand experiment has been imperfect from the beginning. And I think World War II there was a lot of really things behind the scenes that we don't even know. However, the greatest generation was able to pull together in a very short period of time. Why? It is because of the capitalist system, the free market. It is because of the free market system that we have what we have today. And how do I know this? Because what happens when you have socialism is you have centralized planning. And even if it's not communism, even if it's not Beijing or Moscow, it is centralized planning to a degree that control gets taken away from your local government. This is very unhealthy for a society. If you look back let's say even the 1800s, okay, 1880s, Jim Crow was happening, which is very bad. But there was a lot of individual initiative being taken by all races, having their own schools, creating the curriculum. Each town had its own infrastructure. People would start businesses where they saw a need. And nobody said, are you Google verified? Nobody said, are you Twitter verified? I find myself, even as somebody growing up in the 80s and 90s, I find myself kind of having a mistrust of homegrown ideas and innovation, which is really odd. And I think it comes from the centralization of media and the idea that if you're not like sanctioned by some kind of central authority, that you're not legit. Now, obviously, I think regulation has no teeth, and watching the taxpayer money and all that has no teeth. But I mentioned in my last video, regulation for some reason by these clowns that have been in power for so long. You know what I think it is? This is why it makes no sense. They go in, they try to regulate it, but they cannot get the special interests out of their heads, out of their campaign coffers. So what they do is they leave certain players out of the regulations. They make an uneven playing field a lot of times. They're paying lip service to fairness, but really what they're doing is they're just trying to please everyone. So that's why I think a lot of the regulations that we have had over the years have not been conducive to healthy capitalism. Now, healthy capitalism is the best system that we've had so far because it's organized chaos, people using their best ideas, their IQ, getting the best training. They then see opportunity and they do their best. If we just leave it where people are getting stimulus checks and restaurants don't have any help or any workers, and then, I mean, we can already see it. There's nothing wrong with welcoming more immigrants, but let's do it for the right reason, not to tear the system down. Let's make sure that this generation that's coming up now, the one from before COVID and now the COVID generation, that they aren't so afraid of everything because of the centralized nature of science itself, that they cannot maintain a healthy capitalist system. That's why I don't listen to anything Bernie Sanders says when he caved twice to the quote moderate Democrats. The second time he did that and he basically bowed to Biden being the nominee, I lost any shred of respect for him that I once had. And the only thing that's right that he says is that the system is not right. Now, as far as the defense budget, we just lost how much equipment in Afghanistan? So yeah, I'm not very confident that these are the people who can allocate the money properly to do any sort of good, because they'll just get bogged down with special interests. And you think I'm kidding, but it's a huge problem. People always act like, oh, that's in the past. We're going to start fresh. No. No, that's why special interests are always finding loopholes in capitalism, which is why healthy capitalism has to be transparent. If you want to leave your thoughts in the comments, I will welcome them. I see some new names there. Welcome. I'm really glad that you're a part of this conversation. It's always great to get feedback. And make sure, if you aren't following the Back to Facts page, please make sure and go ahead and hit follow on there, because we are being shadow banned for simply trying to look at things with balance and not hating Trump. Alrighty.